Hello, everybody, and welcome. We're delighted that you're here for this Q&A on the MLitt and Dress and Textile Histories at the University of Glasgow. I'm Dr. Sally Tuckett. I'm one of the conveners of the programme, and I'm joined today by Dr. Sabina Weber, who is the other co-convener of the programme, and two current students, Diana and Romana. So we'll start off by introducing ourselves briefly. I'll then give you a short introduction into what is expected for the coming year. I realise there may be some offer holders, some people that haven't applied yet, some people that are just thinking about it. So we'll give you a brief overview of what to expect from September onwards, basically. And then we'll leave it open to you, and hopefully you've got lots of questions and we'll do our best to answer them. So Sabina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. So as Sally said, I'm Sabina Weber. I'm the co-convener of the program, and I'm a design historian by training and work primarily on the late 19th, early 20th century. My subject areas are Central Europe and Canada, and I'm primarily interested in textiles, so meaning embroideries, printed textiles, tapestries. That's me.
Lovely, thank you. Diana.
Hello, my name is Diana. I'm a returning student after being out of school for quite a few years. I did my undergraduate in art history, and then I did a master's in architecture before working at museums in museum education. And then I've been working for the past 7 years doing costumes for film and TV. And I'm here to learn more about dress and textile history and just study something that I've always been interested in.
Lovely, thank you. Romana.
Yeah, hi, I'm Romana. I'm from Amsterdam in the Netherlands. I did my bachelor's degree in history over there and a research master's degree in history. And I came to Glasgow to pursue my passion, I guess, and to specialize in dress history.
Great, thank you. And my own background is I'm a social historian focusing on Scotland in the 18th and 19th century. So any classes that I take, you can guarantee that I will shoehorn some sort of Scottish context into the discussion at some point. But I'm very interested in textile heritage, identity, manufacturing and clothing and everything in between. So thanks for the introductions, everybody. Hopefully you've got questions, so please do feel free to put them in the comment section in the chat and we will answer them as they come up. But just to sort of get the juices flowing and get the information out there, it might be helpful for us to give you a sense of what to expect in terms of courses and what to expect in terms of what you're going to do, basically, as of September. So the MLitt in Dress and Textile History consists of 6 taught courses that are spread over 2 semesters. Each course accounts for about 20, it is definitely 20 credits, and you do 120 credits of taught components. This all then culminates in the dissertation, which starts typically after the teaching period has ended in the spring. So Diana and Romana are just starting their dissertation research right now. But in terms of the courses, out of the 6, you will have to do 3 core courses. The first of these is Framing Dress and Textile Histories, and this is offered by the programme because we're very aware that not everybody has studied dress history or textile history in a formal academic setting. A lot of the students that come to this programme may have done history or history of art or costume design, but actually studying the history of dress may not have featured in that academic training. So we use this course to introduce everybody to the different methods that you can study dress and textile history, because it's inherently interdisciplinary. You can use economic approaches, you can use theoretical approaches, art historical approaches, object-based analysis, material culture, all sorts of ways to understand and learn about dress and textiles in a historical setting. That's the first core course. The second core course is Research Methods and Skills. These 2 courses run in semester 2, and Research Methods and Skills is something that's run alongside the other postgraduate programs in history of art, so it gives you a chance to meet other students. This year, that course was wholly offered online. We're still waiting to hear what the actual format will be for research methods and skills for this coming year, but it will still be a cross-program course. So you will meet students from history of art, sometimes collecting and provenance, other master's programs that are run within our department. The third core course is run in semester 2, and that is called Applying Dress and Textile Histories, and that builds off framing. So framing gives you the research skills to go and investigate historical dress and textiles. Applying Dress and Textile Histories introduces you to different people who utilize those skills in a daily real life setting. So it consists primarily of guest lecturers to give you a different perspective of how it might be used in different contexts. So ranging from the curatorial experience and exhibition planning to costume design for film and TV. That changes every year. It depends on who we know is available, what's going on at the moment, if there's any big exhibitions, if there's any big productions that we can tap into. But it's a really lively and vibrant course. In terms of optional courses, we know that this year the offerings from Dress and Textile History will be the birth of modern fashion, dress and textiles from circa 1680 to 1815. So that's looking at why the 18th century is considered the rise of fashion as we would think of it today. And then in semester 2, it will be Victorian Visions. Again, dress and textiles running from over the 19th century, and that's run by Sabina. So Sabina might be able to talk about that a bit more in a second. We also will offer courses that are provided by other programs. So because we're part of History of Art and the Kelvin Centre for Conservation, Heritage and Cultural Research, we have lots of opportunities for crossover with other programs. So Textile Conservation run 2 courses that are open to our students. One is Material Cultures and one is Understanding Textiles. Both of those are very popular with our Dress and Textile History students. Understanding Textiles is a real deep dive into structures, fibres, and production techniques, for example. Other offerings include Modern Material Artifacts, and it was a new course this year and was really successful, and we're pleased it's going again. And that looks more at modern materials in their museum and dress context. So plastics, how do they deteriorate? How do they survive? How can we care for them, as well as how they were made? So those are some of the key ones that are being offered next year. You can also take courses that are being offered by History of Art in general and the College of Arts, but that's all with consultation with us. So there's lots happening. And of course, there's always the ever popular work placements, which everyone is always very keen to hear more about. And I can already see a question in the chat about partnerships with museums. But Sabina, do you want to add anything about the courses that are being offered this?
Yeah, just really quickly. Just a clarification. I think it happened because we are just coming out of semester 2. You said framing and research methods is semester 2, but those are actually in semester 1. So
yes, sorry,
because we're just finishing semester 2. So I just wanted to clarify that. And then I thought it might also be helpful to quickly talk a little bit about how much time students spend with the tutors, because we have this 20 credit system that Sally mentioned, that each course is worth 20 credits other than the dissertation. And that basically means that you have 20 hours of contact over 10 weeks with the course. And that means usually in reality, you have 2 hours of lecture time or an hour of lecture time and an hour of seminar a week. So if you take a 20 credit course, you have 2 hours of class time, and that's structured however the tutor sees fit, or whatever pedagogically is the best fit for that course. And then on top of that, you of course have your work that you need to do, the readings, the preparation, the assignments, and you have meetings with the tutors, tutorials where you can discuss the assessments or any sort of issues that come up. So I just wanted to make sure that people who come from a different context, i.e. not a Scottish context, that those prospective applicants understand what 20 credits means. It basically means 20 hours of contact time over a term, which is 10 weeks. And in terms of Victorian Visions, the course that I'm teaching, I think you summarized it very nicely. It piggybacks onto the earlier period that you're looking at. So I'm basically looking at the 19th century and into the early 20th century. It's called Victorian Visions because it's such a lovely time frame to think about the reign of Queen Victoria. But I am always trying to broaden it out a little bit into a European and North American context as well. So it's not just British, it's also international. And as you can tell by my accent, I'm German originally. I work on Central European and Canadian materials, so I always try to bring, of course, that expertise in. So that's, I think, all I wanted to add to your little spiel. Is there anything maybe Diana and Romane might want to add just to the sort of general setup of the program? Is there anything you think we didn't maybe cover, or something that comes to your mind?
Well, what might be good to add is that if you're really desperate like me to take in as much as possible, some teachers will let you audit courses, so you won't get credit for it, but you will be able to attend the lectures or seminars or sessions or whatever. It can be a lot of work to take on extra because you are expected to like read and engage actively. But yeah, that was something that I was afraid of missing out on stuff, and there's actually sometimes some tailoring to do to squeeze some more in if you're really keen.
That's really good. Thank you, Romane. That's a really good observation. And in Victorian Visions, we had 2 students auditing it this year, didn't we? Romane was in my Victorian Visions. That's why I'm nodding towards her. So yeah, that's a really good addition. Thank you for bringing that up. Sally, do you want to address, Diana, do you have anything to add, or you think we've covered it?
Yeah, no, I think that covers it. I wish I had audited. That's what I would say.
Great. Sally, since you're the convener of the placement module, do you mind answering Amaya's question about what museum? So I'll just read it out. I was curious what museums you partner with for internships or work placements. Do your graduates typically go on to be employed at those museums?
Both really good questions. So for work placements, it changes year on year because it depends a lot on the commitments of the various institutions that we partner with and if they have scope for taking on projects and students. But I can say that this year just ending, sort of the placements that happened this year, they included working on an exhibition for the National Trust for Scotland, and that exhibition opens in June on Alan Ramsay and fashion in Edinburgh. We had Romana was one of 2 students working at the Glasgow Museum's Resource Centre, so perhaps you can talk about that in a second. We had a student working with our own Hunterian Museum, looking at collections of jewellery that have an African origin. And we had students working at the National Museums of Scotland. We also have strong partnerships with various country houses, private homes, basically, around Scotland. So one student has been at Paxton House in the Borders, and we're hoping that next year we'll have a placement with Mount Stewart on the island of Bute. So there's lots of different types of placement that are available. Not always museum specific. They're not always dress and textile specific, but they might need something that has a dress and textile angle that adds to that institution's project. In terms of graduates going on to work, some have gone on to work with their work placements. A few years ago, we had a placement at the V&A in London just before all the stores got closed because they're now moving and everything's much more shut off while they're relocating. And one of those students did go on to become an assistant curator at the V&A. We have another student who also did an internship, a work placement, and she is now curator at the V&A Dundee. So you might not end up in the institution that you worked with, but you gain skills that will help you in that sector. That's the whole point of the work placements. We also had a student a few years ago who did a placement with Scottish Opera, and they worked with them, I think, for about 5 years after that. So it just depends on what you make out of the placement as well as what the institution can offer in general. I wouldn't say they typically go on to go and work in the places where they did the work placement. I wouldn't want to mislead anybody in that, but they certainly have helped give people opportunities to network, to make connections, to just sort of tap into either the cultural heritage sector specifically, or the even the wider cultural scene, so in terms of exhibitions or performance arts and that kind of thing. So it's there for the taking if you have the will and the oomph to go and do it, but it's not guaranteed or anything like that, unfortunately. I wish it was. I wish we could say that, but yeah. Romana, would you like to talk about your placement with Glasgow Museums, perhaps give an insight to what you did?
Sure. Yeah, so I had a work placement at the Glasgow Museums Research Centre, which is just at the edge of Glasgow, and it's where a lot of museums from Glasgow have their collections stored. And me and another student helped the curator of European dress with the repacking and sort of recataloguing online of the Glasgow dresses in the collection from between 1900 and 1909. And it was absolutely amazing. I had so much fun. I learned a lot. It was a great opportunity to really learn how to handle objects and to get up close to them, which is an amazing opportunity. A part of the placement was also to research the objects where possible. So if there were little dressmakers labels in them, we could go into the archives and look what we could find out about it. And that really tied it all together. And I think, like, personally, I'm going to move back to the Netherlands after this, but I definitely feel that the experience that I gained here and the skills that I learned are very transferable to whatever career I'm going to try and pursue back home. So I think that's incredibly invaluable, and I'm so happy I did it.
Thanks, Romana. That's really helpful. It's always nice to hear as well, to hear what you've got out of what we're offering. It's always bittersweet, these kind of things, because it feels like it's coming to the end, and it's, oh, anyway. There's so the next question, Sabina, I think is something that I can answer.
Yeah, I just wanted to, can you just, while we're still on placements, how are they sort of logistically organized? Like how do students, is it every week, or is it a sort of a compact, like what's the logistics of the placement? It takes place in second semester, obviously, but can you say maybe a word about that? I think that might be helpful.
Yeah. Really good point. So placements have to be applied for, and they're advertised at the beginning of semester one. We can't guarantee that everybody will get a placement. As I said at the beginning, it depends on what institutions are available, what scope they have for taking on essentially an extra member of staff, and what projects they've got going. So students will have to apply for a placement in semester one. I'll give everybody all the information when we meet at the beginning of the year. And then the placements themselves go in semester two. The idea is that most students will typically spend 1 day a week during the semester on their placement. And then you do a 10-day block at the end. So in total, you'll spend 20 days working physically in your host institution, or a day working on remote research. A lot of the placements now are hybrid. So you'll have some days on site, some days working from home doing extra research. I think Romana did a bit of this as well. You had a bit of hybrid working in your 20 days. Outside of those 20 days, you're also expected to do an extra amount of research hours on a particular topic or project. Students have to provide a placement poster based on an aspect of their placement that they were interested in. Romana might be able to talk about hers in a second, just give you a sense of what she did. So that's a bit of extra work outside of the 20 days. So it's a big time commitment. We expect a lot from students doing the placements, but I think, as Romana's testified, you can get a lot out of them in terms of transferable skills, networking opportunities, the chance to see how institutions work. So museums, for example, are under a lot of pressure pretty much worldwide, but particularly in the UK. So it's interesting to see how they're coping with those pressures and what you might be able to do to contribute to that institution and that role when you graduate. And at the end of it, each student has to produce a reflective portfolio. So you identify what skills you want to develop or what you want to get out of the placement. And then at the end of it, you reflect whether you achieve that or not. And you produce a work diary and evidence of what you've learned. So that's the basic logistical side of it. But Romana, do you want to talk about your poster? Because it was very different to what you actually did on a daily basis, wasn't it?
Yes, so the poster is supposed to cover a particular aspect of your placement. So it's not like a summary of what you did on your placement. It's something that you have to research a bit separately. So I chose to, from all the dresses that I looked at over the course of the placement, there were some wedding dresses among them. So for my poster, I decided to research Edwardian wedding dress for a bit, especially in the Glasgow context, and I made a poster about that. So it was, yeah, definitely something like a bit of work that came on top of all the other placement work, but it was also a really fun way to sort of explore a bit of a different avenue, and yeah, it was fun to do.
And you got the golden link, didn't you, between some of the evidence that you found? Do you want to explain that a bit? Because that was very exciting, which doesn't happen very often.
Right. Yeah, that was something in my very first weeks of doing the placement. I researched one of the dresses that were in the collection and that we had a dressmaker's label of, and the name of the bride as well. And I managed in the digital newspaper archives to find in a little society magazine for ladies of Glasgow, actually a newspaper article about the wedding in which the dresses are described, and also the wearer of the dress is mentioned and everything. So that was a really lovely moment where it all sort of came together. That was a lot of fun. Yeah,
I hope that hasn't set unrealistic expectations of me trying to make those links across dress history, because it's great when that does happen. It should happen.
Yeah, it's lovely. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you, Romana. The next question is from Amelia, and it's will Fabrics of a Nation be offered? And Fabrics of a Nation is a course on Scottish dress and textile specifically. We try to rotate our courses, and Fabrics of a Nation is now run for 2 years in a row. So unfortunately, it is being rested this year, just like a good museum object. It's being put away for a bit so we can think about it and bring it back hopefully in a couple of years' time. So Birth of Modern Fashion is running in its stead. There are elements of Fabrics of a Nation that can be built into Birth of Modern Fashion. And as I'm running Birth of Modern Fashion, like I said at the beginning, I do try and shoehorn any Scottish reference into it that I can. And as far as the whole program goes, there are still plenty of opportunities to dive into Scottish topics in a lot of the courses if you wanted to. So framing, for example, we will send you off to go to one of the local archives to look at Scottish collections. So that's a chance to engage with Scottish material culture and archival material. The object analysis, which is the main assessment for framing, is also typically based around a Scottish link in some way, because it's based on a Scottish collection. So sometimes it's an object that was worn in Scotland or made in Scotland, but it allows you to make connections with wider fashionable developments and wider manufacturing techniques and that kind of thing. So it's always a possibility there. And of course, if you are super interested in Scottish history, then there's always the dissertation, which will give you the opportunity to really explore a certain theme and topic that you might want to go into further detail on. And that might be a really good segue into talking about dissertation topics, because that's often something that people ask about dissertations and what they can do, when they can do it, that kind of thing. So I don't know whether this is a chance for Deanna and Romana, because you're at the early stages, and I'll stress that so that we don't feel like people feel you should have all the answers ready and good to go. But Deanna, do you want to talk about your dissertation topic a little bit and explain how you got to it?
Sure, I would love to. My dissertation topic is going to be on the costumes of the Mexican Golden Age of film, which is sort of between 1936 and 1956 approximately. And it corresponds to an era of Mexico's political leap onto the grand stage of international relations. And I got into that from doing an independent study on Latin American dress history. And it was an amazing experience. And I had a wonderful time researching a Mexican designer and that designer sort of had so much influence on the London fashion scene. And I was so curious about how Mexican dress in general has an influence on the international scene, and, you know, what people view as Mexican. And so also as a costume designer, I'm curious about how costumes are communicated to an audience. And yeah, I had been thinking about topics since I arrived, and I had gone through a million of them and threw out a million different topics. And a friend of mine who had also completed a master's in fashion history suggested that I should write about something that makes me angry. And my very first job in film, there was a movie I was working on that featured a Mexican family. And there was a lot of stereotypes involved in what we were doing. And it made me really uncomfortable. And I'm also Hispanic, but not Mexican. And I was asked a lot of inappropriate questions. And so it just felt like something that was a nice wrong to right in a way.
I didn't know about this, something that makes you angry tip. That's and here's me and Sabina telling everybody, do something that you find enjoyable, and like that's a completely different. Great. Thank you, Deanna.
Well, the thing is, it really did stir a passion. I'm like, no, I really have to figure this out now.
Yeah, I mean, two sides of the same coin, aren't they? Love and hate, you know, it still gets you going. That's great. Thank you. Romana, would you like to talk a bit about your dissertation, and then we can talk about the logistics of dissertation work?
Of course. I hope you guys can hear me. There's a really noisy car outside. But yeah, so for my dissertation topic, I found it really important that it was grounded in a context that is sort of familiar to me and that I know that I will return to, which is the Netherlands. So this was a good opportunity for me to find a topic in that area. So I will write my dissertation about the Dutch dress reform movement in the beginning of the 20th century. This was a movement, a pretty small movement of mostly sort of upper middle class, artistic, mostly progressive ladies who thought that women's clothing had been too restrictive over the 19th century, and came up with all these ideologies and designs of how to make dress more healthy and beautiful at the same time. And yeah, I went back and forth between different topics for a while, but as I'm sure Sally and Sabina will explain, there's quite a long run-up to when you actually start doing your research. So there's plenty of time to get feedback from your future supervisor, to have conversations about it. So I feel like it's set up to give you some time to develop your idea into something that feels right and that you can work on.
Wonderful, thank you, Romana. Sabina, would you like to talk about dissertations?
Yeah, I think Romana raised a good point, and so did actually Deanna. I think don't come into the program sort of stressing, oh, I have to write a dissertation, what will I be writing on? I think I'm speaking maybe not quite objectively because I am supervising Romana, but I've seen Romana really develop into the topic through the courses she's taken, the kind of work she's undertaking over the program. So I think come into the program and take all the courses that you're taking with open minds and find out what are the areas or the issues or the sort of questions that are of particular interest to you, and then sort of maybe around Christmas or just before Christmas, develop that into an informal proposal. I think Sally might talk about that. There's a lot of steps that you take before you actually commit to writing the dissertation at the end. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. So that's, maybe I'll talk about that as well. Should I? How you actually come to the dissertation topic. So as I said, take the courses in semester one with open minds, do as many of the readings that we offer. So we usually, the courses we have, there is assigned readings for each week, which are texts that we ask you to read so we can discuss those texts. And then there's always optional reading. So if you come across an area that you're particularly interested in, just read as widely as possible. Go to as many exhibitions that you can go to, listen to as many online or in-person talks that are in the areas that we're teaching. Watch documentaries, watch films, period costumes in films, all those things. So the first semester is really, I always think about it, be like a sponge and absorb as much as you can. And through that process, you will very soon find out what you're more or less interested in. And then we guide you very carefully, starting with a preliminary dissertation proposal that you write, where we feed back and where we sort of look at what students want to work on, and we make initial decisions who supervisors might be, because we of course like to allocate supervisors who have knowledge in the area. And then you go away after the feedback and the discussions, the tutorials you've had about your preliminary ideas, and usually you then are given suggestions of how to maybe fine-tune it or expand out, do a bit more work on it. And then there comes a more formal proposal where you really start to commit to your topic, which is then followed by a presentation at a sort of mock conference that we each year hold, which is actually coming up next week, the PGT. This is your big independent piece of work. This is also an important piece of work in terms of where you might position yourself once you finish the degree. So for example, when I wrote my master's dissertation, I knew what I wanted to do next. And so I wrote it in an area that I then could use my master's dissertation to jump into my next educational experience. So you've got lots of time. And I think it's a very important process to come to a good workable topic, because you will then be spending the summer working independently with your supervisor on your dissertation. That's, I think, all. Is there anything I missed out on the dissertation bit? I don't think I have.
I don't think so. Just that it's 15,000 words. So it's something to... a lot of the students may not have written such a long piece before, a lot have, but some have never written something that long before. So it's just, but again, the year sets you up for that. So all the coursework is typically 4,000 to 5,000 words for each written assignment, and that helps you think about what might be good for a chapter chunk, and we build it in to the program. So it gives you the skills to take this big project on.
That actually brings us to one of the questions here, and I'm sorry, I'm taking them slightly out of turn or order. One Alicia asked, I was wondering if you could expand on tutorials and perhaps what other support is available to students, especially with assignments. So should I maybe go and respond to that, because it follows nicely out of the discussion we've just had. So, I mean, first thing I would say is that you are endeavoring you're coming onto a postgraduate degree. So there is a certain expectation of being able to work at that level and having sort of the skills to produce 4,000 word essays, for example. Having said that, there is, you're working very closely with the course tutors. You are meeting regularly, and those meetings are as many meetings as you need to get feedback on small. So the big piece of work, the 4,000 words at the end of a course, is the last piece of writing you'll do. So there'll be smaller pieces leading up to it. So you're not confronted immediately with writing a big final research essay. So again, we've structured the program so it's sort of steps that you take towards developing your academic skills and your writing skills in terms of assignments. And you work closely with your tutors. You also have your fellow students around you. And every year, when we have a new cohort come in, Sally and I and Leslie, our third person who's convener on the program or delivers content for the program, we always are so thrilled to see the mutual support between students, actually. So there's a WhatsApp group. There are meetings going on informally to talk about assignments. So you have a really good peer group that will support you and of which you're a part, because you're all going through this educational experience together. And lastly, the university has a really good infrastructure. It's the student learning and development, which is a dedicated team of individuals who will help with sort of bespoke or tailored content to help you with mastering your assignments. So you can sign up to courses and presentations with them, to workshops with them. And if there's something that we as a team observe that we might want them to come in and do a session for us for the program, we can also do that. So there is the university support. There's the support that your tutors, Sally, Leslie, and I will give you. And then there's the support from your peers, from the other students. So I think that is there anything you would like to add to that, Sally?
No, I think that covers it perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is a postgraduate degree, so there is a certain level of independence that would be helpful. Maybe Romano or Diana could say a word about that. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but in terms of support for the assignments, how did you experience that? Or do you have anything to add to what we said? No. Have we covered it?
I found that I did get most of my support from my classmates, Romana in particular. But you'll get constant emails from the university about ways that you can reach out and get help in myriad ways. There's always some sort of workshop about, figuring out a dissertation topic or how to reference something or how to use the library. And there's always posters along campus. It feels like the university does really want you to succeed, but you do have to seek it out, but it's definitely there.
I also think it's important to remember to just ask a lot of questions if you don't understand certain things. I feel like Sally and Sabina are super approachable and have been throughout the year for just popping a quick email to clear some stuff up or to go to an office hour and to talk some stuff out and clarify certain stuff. So you have to be proactive about it, but support is definitely there. I've had no problem with that.
And that's what I probably meant when I said it's a postgraduate degree and we have a certain expectation of you being able to navigate that. I didn't mean we're going to just drop you in and there won't be any help for you, but that sort of idea that it's your educational experience, you're coming, obviously, this is PGT, so to seek to sort of be active as well on your part. So what else do we have in terms of questions? Sally, do you want to do the advice on part-time? So here's a question from Tilly. What advice would you offer regarding balancing work and study commitments? Is pursuing a part-time degree a suitable option for someone who needs to work?
Again, this is a really good question, particularly in our current economic climate. And short answer is whatever suits you is the best thing for you. So we have part-time students, and that's partly for work commitments, partly for other reasons. And full-time students have also worked. Diana and Romana might be able to speak to this, I'm not sure, but we have had students, it's quite common for students to have a part-time job as well. Depending on what your visa situation is, if you're an international student, for example, there will be restrictions on how many hours you can do paid work. All of that information should be available to you when you get your visa, and through the international office, through the university, that will be all ready and available for you there. So there are certain restrictions like that. But certainly part-time study and part-time work is definitely a viable option. It can get tricky navigating timing sometimes. So depending on what kind of work you're doing, sessions sometimes have to be cancelled or rearranged for unforeseen reasons, and that might cause difficulties. But generally, we try to have things in place as far in advance as possible so that people can work around with their work schedules and they can figure out when they can ask for shifts and that kind of thing. So it totally depends on your individual circumstances, but it's possible. Diana and Romana, again, might be putting you on the spot here, but certainly I know some of your cohort have been working part-time during this. So if there's anything you want to add to that, please do feel free to do so.
I haven't worked in this year, and that's also for, like Sally said, visa reasons, and then some national restrictions that I have from the Netherlands government. So that might be something to double check if you're not sure. But yeah, there are several part-time students on our course who work a lot. And from what I know, they really enjoy doing the course part-time because it gives you a bit more breathing room in some aspects. So yeah, I think it should be possible. I don't have experience myself in it, though.
Thank you.
One thing I would like to just add to also think about is that if you are going part-time, as Sally and Romana both said, is a completely feasible endeavor, you need to also keep in mind that you will be straddling two cohorts. So from a sort of social side of things, you're going to come in with one cohort and be with them for the first year, and then they're going to go off and write their dissertations and graduate, and then you're coming back to come in yet again with another cohort. So from a social perspective, or what we like to call sort of a pastoral perspective, that's just something to keep in mind. You will be straddling two different groups, and you might have formed close friendships with the first group, and then you have to sort of start over again. So that's something just to throw out there. It's nothing prohibitive or making it not possible to be part-time, but I just wanted to raise that issue.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think it's not something that would come to mind necessarily, that you're dealing with two groups of students. Shall I take this one about work placements quickly, and then we can move on to other topics and then come to you. So Amaya is asking if students without prior experience are considered first for work placements. Their undergrad is in costume design and they want to transition to museum work, but their city doesn't have any dress collections. So the way work placements are arranged is students apply with a CV and a cover letter. The institutions make the decision based on that CV and cover letter. So sometimes the placement requires a certain level of experience in a particular topic or area. Others are no experience necessary whatsoever. It all depends on the host. They will make the decision about who they want to pick out of the people that apply. We try and make sure everybody gets one, and you're allowed to apply for 3 placements, so that if you don't get your first choice, you still get a chance at something else. So hopefully it means everybody does end up with something, but it's not done in terms of this student has no experience, so therefore they get priority, because it depends on what the host needs. So I hope that makes sense. Sabina, do you want to take this one from Tilly? How formal does my writing sample need to be?
Yes.
So this is for an application.
Yes, but I think there's one. Yes, let's do that. How formal does my writing sample need to be? My costume construction course didn't require academic papers, so can I use the informal research I did for a project during my BA instead? And maybe you jump in there as well, Sally, because it's you and I who are looking at the applications. I mean, the more adhering to academic standards, i.e. footnotes, bibliography, sort of research you've done, the more along those lines your writing sample can be, the better. I think, in my view. Now, we understand that students, and we love that about the degree, we have students from all kinds of backgrounds. So our students don't necessarily come all from a BA or from an academic background. And I mean, that's even borne out in this year's cohort. There's a really wide variety. But in terms of the writing sample, because it gives us a sense of, or an indication of how you might engage with the kind of academic writing, the kind of assessment structure that a university degree requires. So the more you can tailor your the research you've done for your project in costume construction, if you can maybe bring in a historical perspective onto that, do a bit of extra work on top of it, just to polish it up. And so basically we're looking for students that we can confidently say will succeed with a postgraduate academic degree. And so that's why we're asking for writing samples. And that's why I would suggest, if you can make it as academic as possible, and that doesn't necessarily mean the content so much, it's more the framing of it, as I said, so the conventions that we use in academic writing. But maybe Sally can add to that as well.
I think, yeah, that's the main criteria. We're looking for, if you can use a mixture of primary and secondary material, so much the better. But if you decide you just want to use secondary literature, articles, books, that's absolutely fine. As Sabina says, it's about the construction as much as the content. So we're looking to see that people can perhaps build an argument based on what they've read. They can answer a question based on what they've read. We're looking for that kind of thing. So as formal as you can, like Sabina says, helps us to see that we can then take you to the next step. There's another question there that relates to application. So should we just do that, and then that might tie up the application discussion? Mm-hmm. Is there an assessment criterion that applicants can use to self-assess their prepared example of academic writing to ensure you're writing at a certain level? So there are perhaps two ways to answer this. On one level, if this is a language issue, then you need to do a language. If English is not your first language, then you need to show you've got a certificate that shows you've got a certain level of reading, writing, and comprehension in English, and that will give you that number. So that's one way to answer that. If English is your first language, and if you've come through the American system, the British system, the Australian system, whatever it is, there's no line for you to assess this writing sample by. It typically goes along the criteria that Sabina has just outlined and what we've just said about in terms of constructing an argument, using formal academic convention, the ability to write widely around a source, being critical, and not in like a nasty way, but just critiquing material, assessing it, that kind of thing. That's what we're looking for. A lot of students or a lot of applicants will submit something from their undergraduate, which is wonderful if that's a recent development. If your first degree was a while ago, then we do recommend writing a new piece of writing, because we can't really assess something that's a few years old, because we don't know if that's still how you write. So the short answer, I'm afraid, is there's no real format that you can use to assess your piece of writing, but there are plenty of writing guides available online for formulating essay topics that you might find useful. So a quick Google might, if you feel like you're unsure, that might be a good way to sort of break yourself into that area. Sabina, is there something, have I answered that, do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice. And maybe I could add that you might, if you have a certain area you're particularly interested in, just do read a couple of scholarly essays on that. I mean, there's lots of them available on Google, or, I don't want to advertise, but, there are scholarly articles that are available where you don't have to be enrolled in an academic institution to have access to a library. So just start reading, not so much for content, but sort of look, how did this person structure their essay? What do the footnotes look like? What sort of kind of materials do they use for their bibliography? So not so much reading those scholarly articles for what the argument is, but how they're structured. And that'll give you a really good sense of what we might be looking for. But we're not looking for publishable writing samples here. We're just looking for proper footnotes and those sort of conventions.
I mean, you can if you want, that'd be great. Like send in a publishable article, that'd be wonderful. But yes, we're not expecting it. And Tilly, just quickly, Tilly's asking if there's a certain reference style that you prefer. Once you're in history of art, we prefer the Chicago style, but for the writing sample, as long as you are consistent, go whichever you are most comfortable with. So hopefully that's all the application questions there, nicely wrapped up in a bundle. I think we've just lost Sabina, but hopefully she can come back in a second.
Sorry, my internet just died. That's never happened. Sorry about that.
You made it back. That's the main thing. I was just about to tackle Amaya's question of do students ever do a dual degree specifically with art history? Short answer is no, this is a single degree program, but there are opportunities to take art history courses, for example. So, and your certificate will say MLitt, art history, dress and textile histories. You are graduating from an art history department, so we engage a lot with art historical methods. Some of the team talk sessions are with art historians in our department, so you'll meet them. So art history is woven throughout. If that's not enough, then your outside option could be one of the courses, your 6 courses could be a specifically art historical course that is being offered at postgraduate level. So that's always an option. But it's not a dual degree in terms of like major, minor, if you're coming from the American system, or joint honours is what we would call it in the UK. But lots of opportunity to engage with art historical material, definitely. Sabina, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Oh, good. Yes. Do you want to take the last one, or what seems to be the last one?
Yeah. So what is the general cohort size? Again, that's a really good question. So we have at the university targets, which means a sort of maximum number that we're working towards. And that is for this degree, 18 students. Now, this year we have 14, which I think is a really perfect size. I'm not quite sure yet where the chips will fall for this incoming cohort in September, but it'll be between, I would say, 14 and 18, although keeping in mind that we have a few part-time students who will carry over, so there might be a couple of extra bodies. So I would say around 15 to 20, somewhere in that sort of ballpark figure is the general cohort size.
And of course, as a dress and textile student, you are part of the Kelvin Center for Conservation Studies and Cultural Heritage Research. So you are engaging with students on textile conservation, technical art history, collecting and provenance, curatorial practice. We have a really vibrant postgraduate program offering, and you can interact and engage with all those programs on one level or another. So I think we've just put a warning in the chat that there's about 5 minutes left, and just to give anybody the opportunity to ask any final questions, we wanted to throw one back to Diana and Romana, who've given up their time for this afternoon, and that was, if you could give one piece of advice to an incoming cohort, what would it be? Like work related, Glasgow related, checking your visa issue, Romana, and working related, anything like that. No advice at all, nothing. You're on your own.
I have a few things that came up when I was thinking about this.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go with all of them. The first thing is something I discovered in semester 1 is as we said earlier, you take 3 classes a semester and they are only 2 hours meeting each week, which seems like, oh, I'll have so much time. But you are doing a lot of reading and a lot of research, and you kind of get lost in that time. And I decided about midway through semester 1 to treat the program as a full-time job, that I worked Monday to Friday, 10 to 6. And that was a game changer, because it was so important to have some sort of structure to keep me going. And also I wasn't scrambling Sunday night to do these readings, because I kept telling myself through the week, oh, I'll get to it, I'll get to it. And it also helps you realize what you need more time on and what you don't need more time on. And then it's also just good to have that structure so that you can frame the rest of your life around it, like any social activities you want to have. I always had something going on Monday night and Thursday night, and it was perfect because I knew I would be done with work by 6. So that really changed my quality of life once I discovered that. And then also, I want to say that everyone should take advantage of everything University of Glasgow has to offer. I chose this university because it's a large research university, and we're part of a program that has a lot of course offerings, and I got to take advantage of some diverse course offerings. Like we were saying earlier, you can take courses in other classes with permission. So, I took a gender studies course. So that was really good for me, because I'm here specifically to study and learn. And, that was the experience I wanted to get out of it. And I think that experience carried over to my dress and textile study really well. I also did an independent study, which was the best experience. Very, very time consuming, very difficult. Do not recommend unless you want to commit kind of time to it. But if you do, I do recommend.
Wonderful, thank you, Diana.
I also have some bits. I think the main thing that I would advise future students is to really engage. So if you're anything like me, dress history is some sort of a passion or a hobby maybe, and this year is really your opportunity to dive into it and ask all the questions you want to ask. There's some great teachers with so much expertise. Really make use of that and talk with your fellow students, talk in class, get the discussion going, because it's an amazing opportunity and it's so much fun. And sort of in the same vein, make use of the library a lot, because library collection is absolutely amazing. The 11th floor, in which all the dress and textile history books are, is the best floor in the library. It has the best view. The view that you see in the background of Sally and Diana and Sabina is the exact view you have from that floor, so that's excellent. Also, it might be a good idea, if you have the time, to put maybe a basic overview of dress history, like a book, on your summer holiday reading list, because that might be a great help going into your first courses. I didn't have the time for that last summer, but I think it would have been a great help. And while you're here, Glasgow autumn and winter is no joke, so get as much sunlight as you can possibly have, because it gets very dark. And also, for anyone out there who's really struggling with the amount of admin that goes with the application and with the visa, I know that I suffered from a lot of stress and panic about that before I came here. There will be an end to that long list of tasks that you have to do, and when you're here, it's much easier to get help and ask questions from the university in person. You go to a help desk. It's very central on campus, and it gets much easier. So hold on, hang in there.
Wonderful, thank you guys. We see it from a completely different angle, so it's really helpful for you and for everybody watching to be able to hear these kinds of tips and things. So thank you very much. I do see that there's one final question in the chat, which I will address very quickly because it's quite a broad one. And it's Amaya asking, what do you look for in a personal statement that puts an applicant above and beyond? I think the American definition of a personal statement is a bit different. So what we are looking for in a personal statement is your interest in dress and textile history, whether that's formal, informal, like Romana was saying, if it's just a hobby or something that you've done at university. Think about your skills, think about what you can bring to the program, and think about why Glasgow. What can we do for you? What's the program offering for you? If you want to go above and beyond and you're applying to multiple universities, make sure you write a different statement for each university, because each university has something different to offer. And so we need to see what you think Glasgow will do, and then what you can bring to the program and things like that. They don't need to be very long. I would say one side is enough to be able to deal with those issues. We don't need really long screeds. The writing sample is the one that we want long pieces of information for. So hopefully that answers that one as well. Sabina, is there anything that you would like to add to that, or in general to close?
No, I think you phrased that really beautifully. That covers all the points. So yeah, I hope this has been helpful for everyone. I wanted to thank Romana and Diana for giving their time. I think it's so good to get their perspective. And best of luck to all the applicants or office holders to make a decision that's right for you, whether or not to join us. So we hope to see you in the autumn.
Yes, thank you everybody, and yeah, hopefully see you soon. Bye.
Bye everyone.